Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our weekly program where we're live broadcasting from Northern California from the Divine Light Spiritist Group in collaboration with Beseja Spiritual Healing Center. We're located in Nevada City, Northern California, and BSH in Sacramento, Northern California. We're welcoming you all to join us for this illuminating and exciting study of the Gospel according to Spiritism. But we're studying a specific part of the Gospel, something that some of us may not have paid distinct attention to. And that is that every chapter has two essential parts in the Gospel according to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. First comes Allan Kardec's explanation to certain sections in the Gospel. But every chapter also has the Spirit's teachings, and the Spirit's teachings are comments by spirits on high. Some of them have names that we know from their incarnations, and others are nevertheless not any less high. It is amazing to focus on the Spirit's teachings as they give us a little bit of a different perspective, yet so amazingly adding to the overall picture and our understanding of each and every chapter in the Gospel according to Spiritism. And today we're finding ourselves in chapter 11. Chapter 11, we started off last week. And what is chapter 11? Do you remember? Chapter 11 contains the greatest commandment of all. Do you remember what the greatest commandment of all is? Yes, it is loving one's neighbor as oneself. Loving our neighbors as ourselves. Allan Kardec called it the greatest commandment of all. And he says essentially in the beginning of this chapter that loving one's neighbor is the complete expression of charity. Loving our neighbors as ourselves is the most complete expression of charity. Let us download that so that we remember in our everyday practice to focus on loving our neighbors. Now, loving our neighbors doesn't mean we have to move in with them, doesn't mean they have to come over for dinner every day, and so forth and so on. But it is this unattached, it's this universal love, it's this acceptance, it is for wishing them well, that kind of love. Allan Kardec also says that this commandment sums up all of our duties towards our neighbors. So loving our neighbors as ourselves, and here is the beautiful measure that he gives us, is our goal and our part of our daily practice. Last week we talked about the law of love, and this week, which was part of the Spirit's teachings, and this week we will be focusing on the opposite, namely selfishness. Do we remember what Allan Kardec asked the spirits on high when he wondered about the root cause of all evil on planet Earth? Yes, and what was the answer? The answer was selfishness and pride lies at the root cause of all evil. So today we're going to take a closer look on selfishness. The two spirits that help us understand selfishness even more in depth are Emmanuel, our beloved Emmanuel, and Pascal. And for this matter, we're going to share the screen just to have a little bit of a visual support of our study. So let us see here. Okay, this should work. Okay, I'm going to play from the beginning. So again, if you just joined, dear friends, and hi Tony, so nice to have you. Thanks for joining. Chapter 11, loving one's neighbor as oneself, the Spirit's teachings. And today we will be focusing on items 11 and 12, which are both entitled Selfishness. Selfishness, That plague on humankind, this message is from Emmanuel, must disappear from the earth, whose moral progress it hinders. And again, it totally overlaps with what the spirits on high were giving to Allan Kardec as the answer for what lies at the root cause of all evil on planet Earth: selfishness. This plague on humankind that must disappear, Emmanuel tells us. To Spiritism, the task is reserved of enabling Earth to ascend in the hierarchy of worlds. So Spiritism is the one spiritual direction, so to speak, that is in charge of helping planet Earth to ascend in its hierarchy. Thus, Emmanuel says, selfishness is the target at which all true believers must aim their weapons. Selfishness is the main target of where we need to direct our weapons, our strength, and our courage. So we need to muster all of our courage, all of our strength, and our weapons towards selfishness. I say their courage, Emmanuel says, because more courage is needed to overcome oneself than to overcome other people. And isn't that the truth? How often in our process to get to know ourselves better, we're too scared to look. We have a really hard time admitting to ourselves where we need more work. But we have a super easy time telling other people, or at least noticing it in our minds. So it takes more courage, according to Emmanuel, to address ourselves than our neighbors. And that's why he says it takes all courage to eliminate selfishness in us. Because how can we eliminate selfishness and transform it into charity? We can only do this by recognizing it in us first. And once we've had the courage to recognize it, then we can, in our daily routine of review of our days, we can see whether we're changing or not. And if we're not, then again, we need courage to admit it to ourselves. You see, friends, how important courage is in this process of inner transformation in particular. But selfishness is what we're focusing on right now. Let all of you, therefore, make every effort, not just some effort, every effort to fight selfishness within you. For that monster that devours all minds, that child of pride, is the source of all the miseries in this world. This is a very strong sentence. He says that selfishness needs all of our effort to be fought. And it is the child of pride. So selfishness and pride, they're the flip side of the same coin. They travel together. He says selfishness devours all minds. And it is the source of all miseries of this world. It is the negation of charity and consequently the greatest obstacle to human happiness. So when we're selfish, we can't even be happy. We might think in the moment when we take this or that away from our neighbors because we think we need it and our happiness is hinged on it, that we actually will be happier as a result of selfishness. But that's a myth. So what does selfishness do? Selfishness hinders our moral progress. Selfishness devours our minds. Selfishness is the child of pride. They're together. Selfishness is the source of all miseries. Selfishness is the negation of charity. And selfishness is the greatest obstacle to human happiness. Dear friends, just listening to this or looking at this on our slide, don't we just want to eradicate it ASAP in us? I think so. And then, of course, it's easier said than done. We all know that. But today we're learning that this ought to be at the center of our inner transformational work, to eradicate, at least reduce selfishness and pride. Let's see what else Emmanuel has in store for us. Jesus has given you the example of charity. And yes, he's our guide and model. Pontius Pilate, that of selfishness, for while the righteous one was about to walk the holy stations of his martyrdom. This is a righteous man. Why do you want to crucify him? He asked. Nonetheless, he let him be led to his execution. Why did he do that? Out of selfishness. Pontius Pilate, he recognized the righteousness of Jesus, and yet he didn't have the courage to speak up against the crucifixion of Jesus because he wanted to save his own skin. Came probably out of hunger for power, for selfish reasons. It is this antagonism between charity and selfishness. It is to the invasion of the human heart by this leprosy that Christianity owes the fact that it has not completed its entire mission. So Christianity's mission cannot be completed and has not been completed without eradicating selfishness, because there cannot be any charity as long as we nurture and nourish selfishness in us. And only Jesus was 100% not selfish. Consequently, he is our model in everything, but particularly in charity. It is upon you, new apostles of the faith, in whom the high order spirits enlighten, that the job and duty of uprooting that evil has fallen to you, as to give Christianity all its power and to clear the way of the obstacles that hinder its forward progress. So, in other words, Emmanuel points the finger at us. He says, you guys, us, we all. The responsibility lies with us to help ourselves, to help our neighbors, and to help the overall Christianity, the movement, the truth on planet Earth. So for us to work on eradicating selfishness in our hearts and minds is actually in itself a charitable act, as we will be helping to boost Christianity, to finally help Christianity to complete its entire mission. And that cannot be done without you and I working on releasing our selfishness. This is how big this work is. It's vital. It lies at the core of our reincarnatory plan. Uproot selfishness from the earth so that earth can ascend the scale of worlds. This is how far-reaching our work of reducing and eradicating selfishness is. Because without us doing this work, earth cannot ascend. Emmanuel tells us very clearly. We need to uproot selfishness from the earth so that earth can finally ascend the scale of worlds. It's all hinging on us. Did we know that the power lies within us? Actually, in everything. We just always give our power away because we've been raised and conditioned for lifetimes and lifetimes that others have the power and we don't. We are powerless. We always feel powerless. We don't recognize the power that we have. And Emmanuel reminds us of it with just one example in selfishness. And that's a big one. It's a huge one. It's at the core of our work. For the time has come for humankind to don the toga of manhood. And to do so, you must first do what? How can we don the toga of manhood? Now, what does that mean? At the age of 15, boys of ancient Rome were allowed to use the white toga, symbolizing manhood. The imagery used in this message symbolizes the maturity of the planet. So Emmanuel is saying, uproot selfishness from the earth so that earth can ascend the scale of worlds. For the time has come for humankind to have reached the maturity. And to do so, you must first uproot selfishness from your hearts. So to reach this maturity that we're ready to reach lies in our court. And that is to uproot selfishness from our hearts. Without that, we don't transform, we don't ascend, we don't purify ourselves, and we don't help the process of the same for planet Earth. Dear friends, the responsibility is big. So let us have more courage to overcome ourselves. Let us focus on eliminating selfishness. Let us follow Emmanuel's advice in seeing the bigger picture of how important it is, not just for us, but for everyone else, is hopefully boosting us and initiating us renewedly, gives us a booster shot to continue to work even harder on relinquishing selfishness. Let us move on to item 12. Item 12 is entitled Selfishness as Well, and it is by the Spirit Pascal. What does he say? If people were to mutually love one another, charity would be practiced more perfectly. So if we were to mutually love ourselves more, then charity would be practiced more perfectly. However, for this to happen, you would have to make an effort to free yourselves of that breastplate covering your hearts, so that you may be more sensitive to those who suffer. So Pascal starts off his message, which is entitled Selfishness, pointing out our breastplate, that we are the shield that we have installed before our hearts, in front of our hearts. And he says, planet Earth would be a more loving and kind, more charitable place if we took down this breastplate of hardness. Because with it in place, we're not really capable of feeling. And including in our feeling is feeling our neighbor's misery. We can't have empathy. We're calloused. We go online and we scroll by all the hardship that other people or groups or political situations that are being experienced on planet Earth. It's just next please, next please, next please, right? That's what we do. So Pascal asks us, take it down, reduce it. At least at times, let's take it down. And then we practice feeling. And sometimes feeling isn't very comfortable, is it? It's not the easiest. It's much easier when we don't feel. But it is in feeling that we transform and get becoming closer to God. Hardness kills good sentiments. It's true. Hardness kills good sentiments. Christ never rebuffed anyone. That in itself, Christ never rebuffed anyone. We should make that a sign in our homes as a reminder. Christ never rebuffed anyone. Where are we at in this? Do we still rebuff people? In our thoughts? In our feelings? Having the breastplate on of hardness? In our words, in our actions? Do we push people away? Too much right now. Can't deal with it. Friends, we're invited to open our hearts more and to follow our guide and model. He's our guide and model, and he never rebuffed anyone. Hardness kills good sentiment. Christ never rebuffed anyone. All those who came to him, no matter who, we're never rejected. The adulterous woman, and now Pascal gives us examples how Jesus never rejected anyone. Never anyone. Those are pretty clear words. So here's number one. The adulterous woman and the criminal were both helped by him. Both he helped the criminal as well as the adulterous woman. Now, you might think, oh, big deal, adulterous woman, no harm done. But let us, even today, it's not a good thing. But back then, it was even worse. We're invited to really transpose ourselves 2,000 years ago. He never feared that his own reputation would suffer because of it. Do we worry about our reputation if we support certain people and groups and directions? Are we worried about our reputation because we are Spiritists or following Spiritism, studying and practicing Spiritism? Just an example. We could use Spiritism as just a placeholder, it could be anything. Are we still worried about our reputation is the question. And why would we be worried about our reputation? Out of selfishness and pride. There it is again. It came right into our room through the back door again. There it is. One big circle. Always comes around and around and around. So when will you take Jesus as the model for all your actions? Pascal is asking. When will we take him as a model? We always say he's our guide and model. Are we walking our talk? Have we taken the breastplate of hardness away? Have we worked diligently and every day in a focused way on relinquishing selfishness and pride? Do we still worry about our reputation? Those are all our therapeutic questions this evening, dear friends. And in order to feel the messages, in other words, to implement them into our everyday lives, it is vital that we hold up the mirror and reflect the teachings through questions back into our hearts and minds. So we get to know ourselves better, to boost our courage to look. Yes. If charity were to reign on earth, he says, evil would no longer have predominance. Now, this is a pretty far-reaching statement, and we wish the statement would be passed on far and wide on planet Earth. If charity were to reign on earth, evil would no longer have predominance. Charity, the antidote to selfishness and pride. Charity in helping others practically, even in almsgiving, but even more importantly so, the moral charity, which is FBI, forgiveness, benevolence towards all, and indulgence towards others' imperfections. Forgiveness of offenses, and of course our own self-forgiveness as well. It would flee in shame. Selfishness would flee in shame if we were more charitable. It would hide itself because everywhere it would find itself out of place. So evil, which is the root cause for evil, is selfishness and pride. So it's all one package deal, would hide itself because it would find itself out of place. It would flee in shame. When would it flee in shame, and when would it hide itself because it would feel out of sight, out of place? If charity were to reign on earth. Now, we can't practice charity without working on our selfishness and pride. So Emmanuel focuses in his message on the selfishness as the stopper for charity. And Pascal focuses on charity, saying that's what we need to practice. And what's in the way is selfishness. That is when evil would disappear. You can be sure of it. That is when evil would disappear. When would that be? When we make charity our focal point in our lives. Now, at times we may want to focus on selfishness because then it's like a teeter-totter. At that moment, charity would become bigger in our lives, or we focus on charity, making that our focal point, and selfishness will be reduced. So we can't lose by focusing on either selfishness or charity in our inner transformational work. Start by making an example of yourselves. That's his advice. Let us be the walking, charitable beacons of light in our lives, in everyone's life, on planet Earth, in our neighborhoods, at our work, in our spiritist centers, in our families, in our circle of friends, in our communities, in our towns, our cities. Be charitable towards everybody indiscriminately. I love it. We love it. The spirits are so clear. There is no doubt. There's no doubt. There's no weakness or waffliness of language. It is very clear. Be, not you would be well advised or please be or something. No, be charitable towards everybody indiscriminately. Make an effort not to pay any attention to those who regard you with disdain. Let us not pay attention to those who regard us with disdain. That would just be a form of selfishness and pride, because then we're worried about our reputation again. And leave to God the burden of all justice. Another amazing advice. We know it, but we can't hear enough of it. We on planet Earth are judges. We judge with every thought. We're judging. And we're not judging ourselves as much as we judge others, right? The proverbial plank in our own eye and the speck in the others. And here, Pascal says, leave to God the burden of all justice. It is a burden. Once we stop judging, because it's not our job, we just took it on, we grabbed it from God, we will feel lighter. And then it frees up all of our energy and time to focus on what? To focus on practicing and seeing how selfish we still are, and on practicing charity. Selfishness is the negation of charity. Now, without charity, there will be no peace in society. And we see that. There is so much war, and not just war where the bombs are flying and where people have weapons and are fighting each other, but there is so much energetic war. There's so much thought war, feeling war. We're still very warlike, militant. But here is the remedy. It's charity, dear friends. It's changing the lens onto how we can do the good. Yes. Selfishness is the negation of charity. Now, without charity, there will be no peace for society. I would state further that there will be no safety. That is an interesting statement. There is no safety in society without charity. Yeah, we can come up with many examples in that direction. We would say that people won't be helped. They're left at their own devices, which makes their situations unsafe. How many robberies and crimes are committed in the name of selfishness and pride because there's no charity. There's no concern for our brothers and sisters. It's me first. I kill, I take, I murder in the name of me. I want it. I'm upset. I. It's all about me. So there won't be any peace and there won't be any safety in society without charity. With selfishness and pride, which walk hand in hand, selfishness and pride, which walk hand in hand, life will always be a pathway for the shrewdest, a conflict of interests in which the holiest affections are trampled on, where not even the sacred ties of family are respected. We know it so well. We've lived it so many lifetimes, and we're still living it to certain degrees. Selfishness is at the root of all evil, dear friends. So Pascal, in summary, says that we need to remove this breastplate that has been installed here millennia ago in front of our hearts, so then we become more sensitive. We can feel more. We can actually see more. And with the lens towards the good. Let us remember that Christ never rebuffed anyone. And when Pascal is asking us, will we finally follow our guide and model in all our actions, in all of our thoughts, in all of our feelings? Without charity, there won't be any peace. There won't be any safety. Or let us turn it around into a positive statement. Charity will create peace for us and on earth. Charity will make our life safe and life on earth safe. And let us leave to God the burden of judgment, of justice, because only God knows justice. And God is the master of practicing justice and mercy together. Because we know justice alone is cold, because the breastplate is in the way. Right, friends? Once that's down, that's what God's position is in. Justice and mercy together. So let us leave it up to God. God knows how to do that. We don't know it yet, and maybe never, until we are God ourselves, or become one with God again. So, dear friends, this wraps up our study for today. Next week, we will continue with chapter 11. This is a very important chapter. And why is it so important? Because loving our neighbor as ourselves is the most important commandment for us. And with this comes the law of love, practicing charity, and relinquishing selfishness and pride. So we will take our time so we can digest and practice. So for the week to come, let us renew our commitment to have the courage to look inside of us and see where selfishness is still rooted, where it needs to be uprooted. It will be a good week. And the more we work on relinquishing our selfishness, the more peaceful, the more safe we will feel. Next week we will continue, so God willing, with items 13 through 15, and those will be entitled Faith and Charity. So we will add another dimension to charity and this work of relinquishing selfishness and loving our neighbor as ourselves, because that's the commandment we are practicing above everything else. Loving God above all and our neighbor as ourselves. dear friends. Thank you so much for joining. So many blessings to you. And let it be a charitable week. So God willing, we will see each other again next week, same time, same place. God bless you, friends.